Hey, hey. Welcome to Threat Thursday, everybody. Thanks for joining. Had to do it again, didn't you?
That's my bad. I hit the enter button. I tried to move my
Can you,
mouse. I'm sorry.
can you tell we're doing it live?
Yeah. Hey, everybody.
So 2026. So hopefully everybody made it through the holidays unscathed. That weird nomad time in between where time doesn't actually exist and nothing matters. You're just kind of here. But so new year, new group of Threat Thursday stuff. As you can see, there's another person with us. I think on my screen they're down there. On yours, they might be somewhere else. But we've got Michael Rogers here with us from Mox 5. And we're talking Akira today. Are they a ransomware group? Are they a piece of ransomware? Who knows? He does. He's had to interact with them quite a bit over the last year or so. So this should be a pretty interesting discussion today. Mike, can you do a quick intro for yourself?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Background on my side, worked in security operations for 7+ years. Got into Mox 5 for the last 5 years, where hyper focused on responding to major incidents, most commonly ransomware. But we see everything from APT incidents, insider threat, you name it, helping large businesses to small recover, understand the attack, and really kind of respond with resilience moving forward. So yeah, looking forward to the discussion, and seeing if we can, hopefully provide back to the audience too, things that you should look out for in your own environments and kind of common pitfalls that we unfortunately see day to day, that you can maybe address without going through a major incident too.
Yeah, cool. So let's dive in here. Let's start out talking stats and trends from what we know, what we've seen, and what we've put together for our customers. They're kind of considered the speed runners of ransomware right now, right? Just huge numbers when it comes to the amount of organizations that they've compromised just through 2025 alone, let alone the previous years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could show, I have a slide that breaks down actually the visual timeline too. I know when I got into ransomware 5 years ago, everyone would see major incidents in Q4, and that would really be the spike in the year. Now we're seeing it month to month. So you can see with this data, right, that Akira was pretty busy throughout the whole year. Quillen and Akira were pretty much competing throughout the year, but when you look back, and everyone used to kind of refer to Conti as the main group that you would see bubbling up, it's really Akira now. So really don't see them going anywhere unless there's a huge disruption, and they have a pretty strong model they set up, even with the menu, right, that they offer. Unfortunately, clients that go through that experience, but and you can see here too, right, the targets were a lot on the States side, but yeah, still impacting Europe, hitting Canada, Italy, you name it. So pretty big sprawl from the different industries that impact, but definitely a big group that we see, unfortunately, month to month at this point.
Yeah, it is really interesting when you look at the actual data and the trends, where it's primarily Western nations, English-speaking nations and companies. And the time frames looking at when they're impacting the most people, it almost follows the same trend as like college kids in school. Like they're really low when they're on final season or summer, and they're really high when they're stuck inside in the winter. It's kind of funny.
Suspicious correlation there, yeah.
Right?
But yeah,
I mean, that's not the truth. That's just me seeing things in lines.
Yeah, I do think there's a piece of it where you think, you see these bigger external vulnerabilities coming out, and commonly in the Q4 time, where you see that spike. But I just think from what we're seeing on the incident side, attackers are using credentials that are leaked more. They're using additional ways to get into environments than your 0 days, right? Where, hey, someone didn't patch the Sonic wall, let's take advantage of that. But then there's that technical debt too, with all the patching required with VPN, the firewalls and VPNs, where maybe clients aren't getting to it, and it's still low-hanging fruit for attackers, right? They're scanning and seeing what's out there, what can they poke at. So yeah, I would say I still feel like the vulnerabilities are a big part of when you see a big uptick, but I think the attackers, as we're seeing them even out their focus throughout the year, they're taking advantage of everything they can get. So definitely interesting.
What's been probably the most prolific, I guess, initial access methodology you've seen from them? Is it they lean one way or the other?
Yeah, I would say the Akira is really well known for the sonic wall vulnerability approach, where either firewall is not patched and they can get in that way, or there's leaked credentials that they're able to take advantage of. So I feel like Akira is really leaning into the vulnerability approach, getting into environments where other groups. Akira is very opportunistic, where they can, I think, scale up and take advantage of it, while other groups maybe don't have the resourcing and tooling to have as many victims as Akira does, unfortunately.
From an initial access perspective too, it has been really interesting how many reports we're seeing that in 2025, now 2026, we're still seeing open exposed RDP and other remote services just to the wild, and kind of opening ourselves up to the compromises at times, it seems.
Yeah, I think I was just talking to a client about that today, where there's a lot of assumptions on, and also kind of just almost too much trust, right? In what a lot of environments have externally facing, where they don't realize that a lot of what's public facing is constantly being poked. So once there's additional logging there, the business kind of realizes, hey, we're actually, attackers are trying to attack us every day or scan us every day. We're exposed in ways that we just assumed weren't there. But then just addressing it quickly too, we see with a lot of the sonic wall vulnerabilities and other incidents, you may have an MSP or a different team that's accountable for patching it. They may patch it, but they may not reset your passwords, or they may patch it a week later. So there's a lot of assumed trust with having a additional party own the patching part of your environment or the firewall component. So it's really, what are you doing in addition to that to make sure you're validating that you don't have some type of exposure? So doing the kind of essentially an attestation, right? A purple team approach, reviewing your attack surface and seeing if you're logging the right things, right? A lot of the instances we work, we have no firewall logs to even look at because they're not logged. So there's layers to it, from just a visibility gap, but an assumption on who's doing what internally, and how quick the team is reacting to major, vulnerabilities as well.
Yeah, and that gets painful.
Another one to add into that too, you're talking about, having the logs enabled and everything like that. I would see often when I was on like the threat hunting team that even if places did have those logs turned on, they weren't ingesting them anywhere, or they weren't reviewing them or taking a look at them. So it's like, even if you have all of those firewall logs on, if nobody is looking at it, or it's not in like a central repo of some sort, probably not going to see it anyway. Like, you're just having it turned on really for like a forensic artifact after the breach has already happened.
Yeah, and a lot of people, let's get to that point, a lot of people just may log that just because more of thinking it's hitting a compliance checkbox versus enabling the security operations, or how is that being fed into your managed detection response team. Yeah, we see it a lot. A lot of the times too, it's the default firewall logging setup, so it's going to roll over and you're going to lose that that visibility. That's the first thing we say when we run into an incident. Can you pull down those firewall logs locally so we can snag those? Because you move forward and start the forensic investigation, you're already losing evidence. So it's definitely a critical piece of the picture, because the firewall logs, they may show some kind of evidence around the VPN access, but unfortunately, right, with all these ransomware cases, there's always going to be exfiltration. So someone's going to be running rclone or different tooling to take out data. So seeing when that started, how much data may be left the environment, that plays into how you have to think through negotiation. So it's a huge piece of just having a comfort level of what data was exposed, stolen, and having some of those answers quickly to counsel your leadership. So by the way, just to highlight, I see someone noted in the chat side around the cloud accounts being, brute force and cloud backups being compromised. We saw that as a big part of this challenge in Q4 with SonicWall, where attackers essentially had legitimate accounts from that compromise that they were able to then log in with, and right from what we're seeing on the client side is really making sure you have password rotation set up. If you're looking at patching something, look at if you need to actually reset accounts, if you need to reset seeds, like kind of really do a deeper dive, because what we saw on the front lines is just kind of, hey, we patched it. We think we did everything we needed, but really, there was accounts that were just exposed that attackers were able to log in with.
So are there any other kind of key sightings, findings you guys saw, or interesting behaviors you'd highlight?
Yeah, I would say with Akira, they were very focused and are continued to be very focused on getting to backups right away. And what we see overall, when I first got into ransomware, a lot of the clients had to pay the ransom because they didn't have backups, and the business needed to be up within a couple of days, or they're facing extreme consequences from a revenue perspective. So we're seeing a lot more companies have viable backups. What the Akira team does, though, they'll go that's what they do immediately, when you get into that environment, looking at how we can delete backups to prevent the team to be able to actually recover without paying. So them using the accounts and privileges and moving laterally to delete backups is definitely something we're seeing them focus on within a short time frame of getting into any environment too.
That's a kind of an interesting point that you had, Michael. So I think typically when you see ransomware actors, it's kind of like a smash and grab, right? They're very opportunistic. Like if something is open, they don't care about the industry or who it's affecting. They're just like, oh, we're in by whatever means we're in. Let's just quickly go in there, exfiltrate as much data as possible. Do some kind of double extortion, ransomware, things like that. Do you see then that as Akira laterally moves throughout the environment, that they take a slower approach to kind of having that impact on oh, we just lost Trey, having that impact where they actually get to the ransomware, the encryption piece? Or do you see them still kind of going in and within a few days, doing their kind of final objectives?
Yeah, I would say they're right for first really getting to ensuring they can kind of push out the ransomware in a way that it's going to impact most environments. So looking at EDR is doing a much better job these days on really defending workstations and servers. So looking at how can they get into the ESXi environment, Hyper-V environment, and impact the hypervisor level. So really they want to know first, can we exfiltrate data? Can we then delete backups? And then how do we impact this environment the most, where they're going to really need our support and decryption tools to get back up and running. We're seeing attackers actually being a little bit more aggressive on damaging. I guess that they've always been aggressive around the damaging environments, but we're seeing where they'll make changes to server infrastructure. So if you reboot it, it pretty much breaks the storage. So I would say they're pretty fast and at what they're focusing on, and using leaning more, as everyone's seen, to RMM tools of installing their own tool that will just blend in, or using existing RMM tools that are in the environment too.
Yeah, it is cool to still see, I guess cool is not the right word for it, but interesting how they're leaning towards living off the land still as much as possible. Seems to be pretty much how everyone's going about it, and it's because it works.
Yeah, and it's you may catch it, but at that point it's too late. So, and there's just so many RMM tools, and not that many companies can have the opportunity to really kind of block and lock down the environment, because it just impacts the business and users to a point where it's something hard to get over. So yeah, of course, looking for and standardizing, whitelisting those tools is important, but we just see still that a big challenge for businesses to focus enough on that too.
Well, that brings up two really good points there. Through all of the engagements we've ran, especially over here on the SCYTHE side, a lot of what we're seeing is, even if things like application allow listings in place, it's not infallible, right? we got like a little trick we like to play where we'll just bring in our own kind of slightly modified version of AnyDesk. We call it Anywhere. Something like that typically always flies by. Or the other side, which is kind of, it's a hard issue to deal with, is a lot of these common living off the land tools that are being utilized blend in so well, they're not defaulting or bubbling up alerts at all, especially if you're using like other bigger name, not bigger name, but like bigger volume service providers or like your watch guards, right? Some one initial instance or a couple instances of PowerShell is a drop in the bucket comparatively. So seeing something like that as opposed to Bloodhound just got infilled into the environment, it's not making the same kind of noise and garnering the same kind of attention.
Yeah, and I would say, and then the exfiltration tools, like, rclone is something that this group uses all the time. It's just like understanding what your internal IT team uses and kind of, if you can, blacklist, right, certain tools that are AZ copy. It's just where can you block those from running in the environment to help reduce, right, or make it harder for them to get to that level of impact. So, like you said, just kind of layering in those too.
Yeah, that's something we always mention with customers, or even really on the TT Lives that we do, is like, if you don't have a good baseline of kind of what is normal in your environment, like if someone does bring in a new tool like rclone or AnyDesk or whatever it is, it's like if they do bring in something new, you're not even going to notice it because you don't know what is normal, what users are doing, kind of typical things and pieces like that. It's just, again, to highlight how important it is as a defender to know your environment, know what's normal, know what your users and your admins are doing and things like that. Because doing, like we're saying, trying to do an application allow listing, especially in a big organization, is very difficult because people want to use, different product or tools, or there's always ways around things. So yeah, just getting a good understanding of your environment and knowing what's on there is definitely a good way to kind of tip you off to some of this malicious activity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we see, we still see gaps in EDR too, where the clients, to your point around whitelisting, blacklisting, with certain solutions, I would say internal teams get a little bit too flexible on what they whitelist. You guys probably see that too with a lot of the emulation you do, right? Where, hey, I just needed to whitelist this. I thought I could whitelist this whole folder, or even just, where they have coverage with EDR. So we've had a lot of cases where we get into environments and we're accessing their existing AV in the EDR tool, and we can see the full attack path and just the EDR not taking action. So having a team that is watching it that 24/7, they can actually contain a host even. It just goes a long way with kind of at least kind of stopping the attack within one host before they're able to move laterally or expand the attack too.
Oh, we got a question from Noah. This is when you talk about, let me add it to the screen. You talk about application whitelisting, you talk about things like ring fencing with Threat Locker. I'm not sure, well, Michael, you might have a good answer on this too. I'm not sure of like the exact tools that you would want to utilize for that, but just kind of in general of application whitelisting is like you can only allow these different tools to, these different binaries or these different tools to run on the endpoint. So, different from application like blacklisting or deny listing, where you're not allowing certain things to run. Whitelisting or allow listing is a much better way because you're only allowing certain things to run. So instead of trying to play like whack-a-mole, like, oh, AnyDesk, block it, or log me in, block it, or whatever, you would just not allow anything other than what you say is allowed to run.
Yeah, that I'm familiar with. Yeah, Threat Locker does a really good job at that. And there's other tools like that you can kind of build in that capability into, like AppLocker and SentinelOne and different tooling. So like you said though, yeah, absolutely, just kind of creating that approved list and also just not letting everyone install applications on their own, and not having local admin is always a good one too, pushing out laps. But yeah, I think with RMM and the challenge that we see, and that being an easy way for attackers to move laterally, we also see RMM tools themselves monitor other RMM tools being installed in an environment, which is kind of neat sometimes. And you can actually, block and take action via the RMM tool. So there's kind of different ways to solve it, I would say too. But yeah, Threat Locker is a good example of a tool that's pretty decent at whitelisting and blacklisting too.
Are there any other key behaviors or things you'd like to highlight about Akira? It's a really interesting group in the way they're acting. For me personally, it's cool seeing that they're not afraid to go after, like your layer 2 and 3 infrastructure, your actual like architecture supporting everything, not just the endpoints.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at our stats too from our cases. So I know we talked about kind of the initial access and the kill chain. So we see them moving pretty fast in environments, under 4 hours even. So that's a lot different than what we traditionally used to see, where it takes a long time. Attacker has access, you have time to react. They're moving slowly. Maybe someone that has initial access passes on that to another group. So we just see like kind of a faster time to action. And then most of our cases are VPN based with this group. We do see Veeam being a very something that they're very good at focusing on within the first 30 minutes of getting access into environments. The ransomware demands, 400,000 is kind of their average ransom demand. So nothing too crazy there, right? Most of these groups are going to try to understand the client, understand how much the business makes. And looking at our data too, we've had well over 20 cases that the sonic walls were actually patched but compromised via legacy credentials. So not, taking just full advantage of the vulnerability out there. Another thing too, the Kraken one kind of hidden VM technique is something that they're taking advantage of to kind of hide within the hypervisor environment. And then what we saw last year was July being the biggest peak, where we had the most cases with Akira specifically. But, I think this group isn't going anywhere. They're going to continue to kind of adjust and adapt their tool set. And yeah, I would anticipate them to be still a pretty big name throughout this year, unfortunately, too.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's actually a pretty good ending point, I think, for us today. It takes us right close to time. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us, Mike. It's appreciated. It's always nice to get an input from someone who's actively seeing them and responding to these threats in the wild, not just me, Tyler, and Jared talking about some cool new little trick we made.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting year. So I'm sure we're going to be talking probably in a couple of months about how these groups are evolving and or changing what they're doing too. So it's a good year to be in cybersecurity. Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on too.
Well, thank you for your time. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you here in another week or so.
See you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.